The Call continues from generation to generation with Don Gessner from Gessner Ministries, a podcast dedicated to exploring the uniqueness of a person's call to ministry.
I'm really excited about the podcast that I've been talking about and thinking about for some time. It's about the call to ministry. And I wanted to dedicate this part of the podcast to just that. I've thought about the fact of my own call to ministry, and then as it relates way back to my childhood and even my teenage years, I remembered that I heard about the call over and over again as a young kid, and it had a lasting impact on my own life. And so I got thinking about that the other day, and I thought, how important the call really is, because it's more than just a career choice. And the scripture even says that in Ephesians 4:11. It talks about, and he gave some to be apostles, some prophets, and some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers. So with that thought in mind, I've thought about who could I ask to participate on the podcast. And so today I have Bill Scott with me. Bill, it's really great to see you. And I'm excited to hear a little bit about your call. However, before we do that, I want to just let our viewers know that I met you for the first time this past summer, and we were doing an event together. And I was just absolutely thrilled at what I was hearing you say throughout that conference. And so I really wanted to hear from you, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. So tell me a little bit about your professional background, if you would.
Yeah, well, thanks, Don, for having me on. And yeah, we had a great time this summer together, and really enjoyed getting to know you and hearing your beautiful music and things. It was great. It was a great time. Yeah, well, what I do professionally, I hesitate to call it that because it's almost like, I don't want to say that I'm a professional preacher, but I feel like I'm kind of like this old guy named Francis Schaeffer in some ways. I feel like, as far as what I do professionally, is I really am kind of an evangelist, but at the same time, that's opened up doors for me to do all kinds of things. So right now, I'm the director of Ratio Christi International, which is an international mission organization, and we equip college students across the globe to share their faith and defend their faith against these bad ideas that come from anywhere from the college classroom to TikTok,
Yeah.
and so we work. My wife and I work daily, mobilizing people all over the globe to do just that. And we also work at Houston Christian University, and in that ministry, we're raising up tomorrow's disciples, working with college students on a daily basis. And I tell people it keeps us young, and we've
Yes.
really enjoyed that for the last 5 years. Before that, we planted a church in Eastern Kentucky for 5 years, and before that, we were doing youth ministry, and we kept doing ministry in our church plant, youth ministry in our church plant as well, and we were doing recovery ministry in Eastern Kentucky as well. So, in all, we've been in ministry for about 15 years, and I would say 13 of those years together, even before we were married. So, yeah, it's really, I tell people I have the best job in the world. I'm living the best life I can on this side of eternity, I think. And we feel very, very privileged that the Lord's using us in this way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Bill, while I realize that the call is a very important piece to ministry, I was hoping that you could share a bit about your call. And when you do that, I was hoping you might just include, because I heard some of that this summer when we were together, but include a little bit about your previous life leading up to the time of your call, if you would.
Yeah, well, I couldn't include a story about, I couldn't tell a story about my calling without also including my testimony, because I received my calling, giving my testimony in a juvenile detention center in eastern Kentucky. But if we go back 6 months before I received my calling, I was marvelously saved by God's grace. One night in a county jail, I was in there for drug charges, and I was an agnostic Buddhist walking into that church service and became a Christian by the end of it. And the
Wow.
Lord really dealt with me and showed me all the things that I had messed up my life, just basically played my life in reverse, just hit
Yeah.
rewind on the old VHS, and it was like,
Wow.
see, like, look at all the things you've done. And I got saved on really the basis. I tell people this, and it kind of shocks them. It wasn't I was convicted of doing drugs or anything like that. It was more of a overall conviction of, I'm really poor at being God of my own life, and I really need God. I need God, and
Hmm.
quit playing around with religion, with this agnostic Buddhism, and give your life to Christ and
Sure.
crucify yourself. And so I went up to the altar, gave my life to Christ, and he delivered me from drugs and set me out the next day. And I found myself at a church, and all these doors started opening, Don. First, it was working in drug recovery ministry, and then talking to students and using my gifts in music to reach out to the young people in my community. And one thing led to another, and I found myself at a juvenile detention center giving my testimony that night. And it was my very first public ministry, really, like giving my testimony or sermon or whatever you'd like to call it.
Sure.
And I really messed it up in my own strength. I really fumbled through. I mean, it was, coming off the street like that and with a test, you're still trying to piece together, like, how do you even tell your story? Because a lot of my story is really dark. So I kind of had this approach, and nobody really told me how to do this testimony thing. I just get up, tell your story, and invite people to Christ, Bill. So I told them all the bad stuff, and I gave the devil so much credit, and I just really did all this, I kind of jumbled it all up.
Sure.
And at the end of that, I felt really defeated, actually, and I sat down, and the gospel group got up and they gave an altar call, and there were about 25 kids in that room that night. And I want you to know, I remember pretty vividly that 23 of them gave their life to Christ
Oh
that night.
my.
That was 15 years ago.
Oh wow.
And I remember sitting there thinking, like, man, you know, God is using me even when I'm stupid and messing everything up. So so I'm leaving the place. We're getting the car, and I'm in this cloud nine kind of feeling, like, wow, this was absolutely amazing. And
Sure.
it's just so cool how God does this. Like, I'm looking out the window, and I can remember looking at a blue sky with white clouds, and it was so pretty. And I'm looking out of my buddy's truck window, and my mentor at the time, John, looks over at me, and he said, "Well, Bill, I think you found your calling." And at that exact moment, I was sitting there having the thought, Don, that I could do this for the rest of my life and be completely satisfied.
Oh my
And
word.
that's exactly how it happened. So
Sure.
then I started praying, and I was like, what do I do? And the Lord called me into full-time ministry by faith at a like 6 months old as a Christian. I was 26 years old, and 26 and a half, basically.
Sure.
So my church gave me a youth ministry position that paid a little bit of a salary. So I quit my job, and I've been in full-time ministry ever since. It's been about 15 years ago. And honestly, I was on my way to be a lawyer before that. I don't even think that would even. There's no way I would be happy at that. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Well,
yeah. That's how I found my calling. Yeah,
that is so good. And while you were sharing that, I was thinking, there are different seasons to ministry as well.
yeah.
But while there are different seasons, it doesn't change the fact that we are called into ministry.
right.
And there's something that's very stabilizing about that. How would you tell a young person today, if you were talking to them about the call, how would you suggest to them the importance of a call? Why would it be important? The why, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, God has all designed. He designs us for a purpose. He doesn't make mistakes. He it says very plainly in Ephesians 2:8 and 10 that yes, He saves us by grace through faith, so that we may walk in works in which He has prepared beforehand. And I don't pretend to understand the mystery of all that, and but I do know this, that when God saves us, He doesn't save us into a vacuum. He saves us with a purpose in mind. He
Yes,
saves us with
indeed.
a great commission purpose in mind. And so a calling is very stabilizing, but I think some of the mistakes that people make when they start thinking about callings, Don, is they're waiting for this big trumpet in heaven to boom and say, this is where I need you to go and what I want you to do. But honestly, that would be walking by sight in your calling.
Oh, yeah.
What your calling normally looks like is something that meets the desires of your heart, that sanctifies you, draws you closer to God, and it's something that multitudes of people around you will say, yep, that's probably what you need to do. And so I counsel young people all the time, if you want to be stable in your calling and know what your calling is, you have to bite the bullet, humble yourself, and surround yourself with 5 people that are smarter than you, that when you have these crazy ideas, you can run it by them and say, and they'll say, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds like your calling. So what does that look like practically for me? I was a youth minister. I loved sharing the gospel. I was doing that for 5 years. I never would have thought I'd have been a senior pastor, but there was a man named Bob, Bob England. He was a pastoral counselor on our college campus at Kentucky Mountain Bible College. And I walked into Bob's office. He didn't know me from Adam, Don. And he, after a conversation with me, he said, "You're from Jackson, Kentucky. We don't have a church in Jackson, Kentucky. You are called to pastor, youth, but have you ever considered pastoring a church?"
Wow.
Well, that sounded right. It felt exactly how it felt like when I was looking out the window when I was a young Christian and God called me to preach. But I knew at that time, I knew myself that I'm a big dreamer, so I need to go check this out. So I did. I went to about 3 or 4 individuals, 3 or 4 mature Christians. They all agreed that that was a good idea. And so I planted a church. And then guess what I found out? I'm not called to pastor churches. That's what, that's something I found out within the first 8 or 9 months. But one of my counselors again said, yes, you're called to evangelism, but it's good for every pastor to be or for every evangelist rather, to be a pastor first. And that was very, very formative. That whole conversation, when Tom Lorimer said that to me, I was like, wow, that's probably accurate. So I spent 5 years joyfully preaching 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week to the youth and stuff. And it really was formative for me. So when I stepped out into apologetics full time 5 years later, I wouldn't have had any idea that's what God's plan for me. That
Hmm.
was what God's plan for me was at that time.
Yeah.
But 5 years later, I step out into that. But there's one more addition of this study, or this story rather, is that one time I took a mission trip to a closed country. I don't know if I shared this with you or not, Don, but I took a
I'm not
Christian.
recalling. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a mission trip to a closed country to take Bibles and medical supplies and things. I can't mention the country. I don't want to out anybody, but
Sure.
we're there working with an underground church. And this man, and they aren't off the rails on anything. They're not crazy.
Sure.
But this guy very reasonably walks up to me, and and I haven't shared this publicly very much, and he said to me, and this is just before I'm about to move to Houston, Texas, and get my master's in apologetics. And I'm not kidding, Don. What he said to me was startling, but it wasn't something that boosted my pride or anything. It just gave me a sense of responsibility and a depth to my calling that I'll never forget. He said, Have you been to this country before?" And I said, "No, I've not been to this country before." He said, "But I've seen you before." And then he mentioned that he had been praying for me months beforehand because he had seen me
Hmm.
in his prayers.
Hmm.
And this is all through a translator. And then the translator's eyes get really wide, and he said, "Pastor said that the Lord told him to tell you that you're going to travel all over the world and preach to thousands of people."
Oh, my.
Well, guess what I'm doing today? Traveling
Yeah.
all over the world preaching to thousands of people. And it was one of those things where it's like, if that was not from God, I think it would have boosted my pride, and I'd want to put a billboard up somewhere to say the prophet Bill Scott is coming, Bishop Bill Scott's coming your way. Or it was just one of those sense of responsibility. It's like, you're going to be prepared for much. You're going to Houston to be prepared for much more than what you could ever imagine. So just hold on. Don't tell anybody about this. Just let me open doors. And in your calling, God will open up these doors and seasons where sometimes it'll be a door down into the basement. And you're wondering, well, why am I here? It's, well, God's called you to be in the basement for a while. And sometimes God calls you to go to the upper floor, which I feel like
Sure.
where I'm at now.
Yeah.
But it's a whole lot of work, but it's something that it like God's Spirit just sustains me all the time. The Holy Spirit's just constantly sustaining me. And I think walking in that calling, knowing the Lord's will, watching these things happen and just say, Lord, I want to go and be where you are. I'm available. The Lord will do something in your life that you just could have never. As I think it was Billy Graham that said, the Lord will write a story. He will write a story of your life in which you could have never written yourself. Like there's
Yeah.
just no
Yeah.
way.
And while I was listening to you share what you have just shared, I was thinking, you know, what stood out to me was for you, the calling seemed to be sort of a process
Mm,
and not just this bolt of lightning that all of
yeah.
a sudden I've got this calling. I'm not suggesting that it couldn't be that way because I think for some it does come in a way that there's such clarity to it.
Yep.
But I think for you, and I love that's how you expressed it, because you just kept following what you felt was God directing you. And it has led into this beautiful place that God is using you in a tremendous way. And so I'm very grateful for you taking the time to share on this episode how the call has come about in your own life. And I hope that it'll just be something that could inspire, especially young people. I know that it has entertainment value to it for all of us who have been in ministry. It's interesting to hear, how you got your call. But I hope
Hmm.
also that it'll serve as a real challenge to young people that the call to ministry is far more than just a career choice. So
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for doing that. And Bill, before we leave today, could you just tell our viewers how they might be able to keep following you?
Yeah. Well, another part of this calling is, I've started a YouTube channel in the last couple of years. Not to be famous or anything about it, just to try to expose uh, really bright Christian thinkers that want to comment on the culture and things like that, and on the global culture as well.
Hmm.
And that's called The Truth Convo, is my YouTube channel. So you can find that at The Truth Convo on YouTube. And of course, if you wanted to reach out to me personally, I'll get my email address is just my name, Bill Scott at ratiochristi.org. That's RATIOCHRISTI.org. And I would absolutely travel and speak all the time. This coming, we're in October 2025 right now. So in November, I'll be speaking in Boston, Massachusetts, in place in Montana I'd never heard of before, and looking at going to South Dakota next uh, next semester, and Nairobi, Kenya, even, and possibly Albania. So
Oh, wow.
obviously, um, nowhere is too far for us.
Yeah.
So if you'd like us to come speak at your church or anything like that, we would love to share what the Lord's doing overseas. It's really amazing to see what all's going on over there, and we're just anxious to tell people what God's doing in some of these universities and some of these countries you would never imagine. God working and stuff. And yeah, so we're always available for that. And of course, we've talked about this, Don, doing conferences, conference ministry, and things like that. It's just something we do all the time. So, matter of fact, I'm speaking in a conference tonight via Zoom, Apologetics Kenya, on
Oh, wow.
on science
That's
and
awesome.
faith. So
That's awesome. Well, I know for sure that when we were together this summer, your sessions that you shared in that conference were amazing. And I loved every minute of it. And thank you for taking the time to just share about your call. And I know that it will inspire somebody that will be watching. Thanks again.
yeah, appreciate it, Don. And I'm just glad that the Lord's helping us.
Great. Thank you.
I hope the stories of the call to ministry will inspire you. Please take a moment to like and hit the share button as we prepare for the next episode.